G'day everyone, it's Craig from People with a Passion, and I'm with Stephen Fleming of 13th Street Films, and we're going to be talking about video production and producing, directing. How are you, mate?
Great. Thanks for having me, mate.
This is a passion for you. It's something you said you wanted to do for a very long time as a child. Do you want to talk about where you first thought, I want to do producing and directing?
Yeah, so I've had this question a number of times now. We've been starting to get the ball rolling and get a bit known in the local community. It's actually quite a silly thing. I first got interested in like filmmaking from watching Jackass when I was a kid, and just the stupid stunts they were doing. I wanted to do that with all my mates.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, let's get like a handy cam and run around pranking people and freaking out old ladies in Sandgate, where I'm from. And that's kind of the first thing I ever did as far as camera work and editing and telling people what to do, which is basically what directing is.
Yeah.
And it became an obsession. I used to make stuff with my mates for no money that was terrible, with no training, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and I self-taught a lot of the stuff.
Yes.
And that, years and years down the line, I ended up going to uni properly, learning the skill, and then now being able to do it professionally.
Yeah. So what did you study at university? What was the course that you did?
So it's at Griffith Uni. They have an actual film school separate, part of the whole arts college in South Bank. So you're doing a film degree.
So when did you actually decide to go to uni? At what stage in your life? Did you do it straight out of school, or did you do it a little bit after, or did you try some other things?
No, so I did want to do it straight after high school, and got discouraged by, kind of the whole thing of, you won't make any money in this, where is it going to lead, from family and friends and other people.
Sure.
And kind of went in a different direction, actually. When I was a kid, I was doing a sports course at TAFE straight out of school and doing a lot of coaching. And then that kind of didn't really lead anywhere to financial, like a proper full-time job. I ended up going to Europe, mid-20s, living in the Netherlands for a few years.
Yes.
The whole time I was still doing film for fun with my mates.
Sure.
When I got there, I was working with a small group of expats, and I started doing commercials for companies that over there.
Yeah, sure.
Who wanted stuff in English and, someone who knew what they were doing. And then from that, it really spurred me to I could actually make money out of this, and I could do this as a job. And I kept writing, and then as soon as I got back to Australia, which I planned to go straight to uni, I had to do one of those adult tests to prove you're not stupid, because my OP was so bad when I was a kid, I didn't care about school at all.
So you went in so you went in as a mature age.
Mature age, had to do that test, and they're like, all right, you're in. And then I'm around all these 18-year-olds trying to not freak them out that I'm like an old man, even though I'm 29 and I look 22.
Okay. So you came back to Australia, you studied at Griffith University. What was the course you actually did at Griffith?
So it's a Bachelor of Screen Media. So it's basically, they have a film school there in the Arts College in South Bank, and you can learn, every different discipline there. So if you wanted to do lighting, you could focus on that. If you want to be a director, you do that. If you want to do sound. So you learn all the basics of everything, and then you start specializing as the course goes on.
What was your specialization then as the course went on?
So I was really interested in writing, directing, because I love coming up with a new idea, and I have the personality to lead a group of people. I've always been very outspoken and strong, and I think a little bit of that comes from also being the oldest in the family. It's a weird thing. You look at jobs with leadership, a lot of people are the oldest in their family. So it's the first time you're ever directing or, managing is getting your little brothers and sisters to in the car on time or something like that.
So you had some people around you saying this isn't necessarily a good idea. How did you mentally come up with the idea that, no, this is for me? What made you or motivated you to not necessarily ignore those voices, but obviously you would have contemplated what they had to say, but you've gone in the opposite direction, just said, you know what, this is what I want to do, and how do you get to that point?
So I think the desire to do something that you believe is exceptional, not average, I have a kind of a weird fear of living a normal or average existence. I find the word normal scary. If someone was like, you're normal, I'd be like, that's an insult. Do you know what I mean? So I always wanted to do something, memorable or of significance with my life. And this is just the thing that felt right whenever I did it, all the way back from being 13, mucking around with a camera in the backyard to, directing 30 crew and 20 actors like I did a week ago. It's that same feeling, and it's just enhanced, and it's addictive. Every time you did it, you want to do it again. And if you talk to a lot of artists with, their passion, you'll get the same result.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about your writing. So directing's one thing, writing for me is another. So you chose that path of writing, writer director. When you write, do you think about does it flow, or you have an end game? How does it work from a process point of view?
For the story structure.
Yes.
Yeah, so usually I get obsessed with a concept, like an idea or a theme, and it starts there. And often writers will tell you this is like, don't write down an idea when you first have it.
Yeah.
See if it comes back, because the ones that come back and keep coming and gnawing at you, they're the ones you have to write. So if
Okay.
you have 5 ideas over, the first 3 months of the year, and you're like, oh, I'm going to start writing a new script, in June or something. The one that you can't get out of your head, that's the one you should write.
Okay.
So I do the same thing. I don't write it down. If it's in my head, swirling around there while I'm working on one thing and the new idea's coming, then I know that's the one. And then as far as writing it, it depends. If I want to make it myself, then I write it to be producible. So that in the Australian small industry, that means affordable, basically,
Yes. Yes.
Keep it simple, limit your maybe locations, maybe how many characters you have. Definitely like the style of the thing. You don't want explosions and helicopters. You want the story to be able to be told well
Yes.
in a way you can make it. So if I'm writing something that we're going to produce at 13th Street, we're going to have a low budget. We're going to be trying to do it as efficiently as possible.
Yeah.
So I'll write to that structure. Whereas if I was writing something on spec, as they say, so just say you got hired to write a Marvel movie, you can write whatever you want because the money's no object.
Sure. And you doing some commercial work too that helps pay the bills. Interestingly, at university, you entered a competition for some funding for something you'd written, and then once you received the funding, you had to produce that. Do you want to talk to that? And that was a bit of a reality check for those people that were saying, don't do this, it might not be an industry for you.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the first little tick box for me for self-belief as well, that I'm not like just an arrogant idiot that thinks I'm good at a thing. I think I showed that I have merit in this thing and I have potential. And yeah, you get to show your friends and your family and say, look, this is a little step, this shows something. So it was a grant from Canon Cameras to make a film, and the way you applied was a bit of detail about yourself and giving your script. And they picked 2 scripts out of, thousands in Australia to get funded. And then we made the film, and then we took it to film festivals and that kind of journey.
Yeah, so you said that was when some of the family members saw the end product too and said, actually, no, you know what? Maybe you are right for this.
It was still a maybe, though. But
It's a maybe you are.
Maybe this is you, yeah.
Yeah, so everyone's built differently. We all have different things. You indicated that, the older members of the family, grandparents, things like that, almost came out and said, or did come out and say, you're not supposed to enjoy your work. You're just meant to go to work and come home. And
Yeah.
It's not about enjoyment. Why are you trying this? It's, you just work and you do a job and that's it. So culture, obviously, or generations change over time and perceptions change. And obviously that's not where a lot of people are at these days. So what gives you the confidence to wake up every morning pursuing something that is as hard as I imagine directing and producing actually is, and writing?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I'd say one of the biggest kind of realists in my life would be my dad. But at the same time, he'd be like, that's crazy, you're not going to make money in it at the start. But he's the kind of person who took the same kind of risks in his industry. So he had a stable job, made his own small business, risked everything, and made it a success. So in a way, even though he doubted, my journey at the start, I'm doing almost the same thing, but just in my chosen passion. Whereas he took a little bit of a safer route. He still did the same thing, took a risk, put his knowledge and passion into it, and it paid off. So it's kind of ironic in that way.
So do you see him as an inspiration for you in that regard too, knowing he actually successfully built a business, and you see that it's, like you say, it translates to what you're doing, not the same industry, but basically saying, well, you could look at him and almost flip that to him and say, well, you actually did this.
Definitely. His work ethic is unquestionable, and that's something that I think I really admire and that I want to put into my passion, which is filmmaking.
Yeah,
that's probably the biggest thing. So it's that work ethic, and there's a kind of inbuilt confidence, that some would say arrogance, in our family that can really help you push through those challenges and the adversity you face, which in filmmaking you'll hear no a lot. You know, you make a short film, say, take it to festivals, you might get in 10% of the ones you enter. So you're getting a lot of no's. It's the same as being an actor, you know, going to 100 auditions, you get book one role. You have to be resilient, you have to push through that. And I think that like self-belief comes from our parents raising us like really confidently and believing in ourselves.
Yeah, I have an approach around no, is I ask someone if they want to do something. If they say no, I just say, well, I'm no worse off. So
there's actually a Dutch saying about that, and
Yeah.
I always tell people that when they're like scared to ask the question we need to ask. If I'm talking to a colleague from work and it's their job, oh, we need this location, go talk to them, and they go, oh, and they're all nervous and awkward about it. They're all younger than me.
Yes.
So that kind of thing, they get anxiety. And there's this Dutch phrase that just says simply, you have a no now. That's what it translates
That's
to.
it.
So you have a no if you don't ask. The worst thing you're going to have is the same thing if you ask, right?
Yeah.
So it's the exact same kind of thing.
So some people would say that when you ask a question, there are three things that, you know, three possibilities: yes, no, maybe, and maybe is the worst of those three.
Yeah, because you don't know what you got.
Exactly. So no's not necessarily no forever. And interestingly, the approach with what I'm doing here is I've hit up some really interesting people and bigger names, influencers more or less. Now, I have said to some individuals, I've pursued those people. And they're going, you'll never get them. And it's like, well, I'm going to ask the question because it's not for me to decide. At the end of the day, if I put it to them and it's something they want to be involved in, they'll say yes. And I'm a believer that eventually one or two will say yes.
Great.
And once they do, then other people will see value in what I'm doing. So
Exactly. And that can hope. Yeah, if you get one, it can open the door for the next, you know, the network.
It is, and it's just a case of being prepared to take a heap of no's till you get that yes. And that resilience in any creative industry, music industry, film industry, even art, like artists, you know, any environment where you're having to get the yes, like authors, then that's the thing you've got to be prepared for, is all those no's. But it's also jobs as well today.
Yeah.
People just going for
It's hard
a
to even
job.
get a job down the shop or whatever when you're a teenager, or, you know, like it's crazy.
And it can be dejecting for those who are taking the no's, but they're only one question away from a yes, and that's the other approach to it. So, look, you were talking earlier off camera about process and how you're constantly working. You're talking about your dad's work ethic, and you try and apply those same principles to what you're doing, that you're constantly working on new projects. Do you want to talk about like the three sort of things in that process that are always ongoing for you?
Yeah, so basically in film you have pre-production, production and post-production. So basically pre-production, you're planning, you're preparing to do the shoot. The production is shooting the film the days you're on set, and post is editing, which incorporates, you know, in-depth things like sound, visual effects, color grading, and then the actual editing of the video clips predates all of that stuff that comes right at the end. So it's it can be a long, drawn-out process. And as a independent production company, we want to always have some content online or to show, releasing, whatever like that. So we always have a product that we're promoting and advertising. We have something we're working on at that time, and we have one in development, as they say. So something we're writing and honing that'll then become the next thing that goes into pre-production.
Yeah, sure. So some of the stuff that you've done is up on Facebook and YouTube. So I'll actually link that stuff into the description of this video so that people can go and actually have a look at the work that you're doing.
Great.
And you've picked a little bit of a genre on that stuff. Obviously, you said you've done corporate commercial work, both in Europe when you hadn't done your degree, but also now it's part of 13th Street Films that people can actually get you to produce corporate stuff for them, or ads and things of that nature.
Yeah, we've done small business, we've done big national television commercials, so any scale we can do,
Yeah. So speak to the genre that you've chosen a little bit, because you're writing a lot of this stuff. I think it's a tough genre myself. Like I'm not a funny person, so I'm going to talk about comedy now. But some would argue probably maybe they think I am just by looking at me. But if you're chosen a genre of comedy, like how hard is it to write to try and get a laugh where you won't necessarily get the result of that until after a film's produced, to know whether that came off. So why the comedy is the core genre of what you're doing on the Facebook and YouTube?
Okay, so first of all, it's more fun. When you're on set, it's fun. When you're writing it, it's fun. So I write a lot of stuff with my partner, Sean, now. She's a art director and production designer as well. So we're almost doing everything when we're making a project. Yes. We're very heavily involved. But with comedy, it's great to write in pairs at least, or groups, because you're getting that bounce back. Oh, what if he said this? And you see the reaction. Oh, is that funny? Does that make sense? Yes. And it keeps you grounded too, because I've got a pretty, out there personality, and I'll maybe go on a tangent. And it's good to have a writer that's more logical, like Sean. She'll go, oh, the character wouldn't really do that. So there's things about that too, about what makes a story funny and a character funny, is knowing who that character is, which is in any story. So if you're doing a drama, you're doing a sci-fi, whatever, you need to know who that character is. Character is the most important thing in film.
Yes.
The character leads the story, not the other way around. And the comedies either works or it doesn't. The most interesting part of doing comedy, I think, is when you get on set and actors are trying to be funny and you go, no, don't do that. Do what's on the page. Play the character. The character being real in the situation is what's funny. You don't want them playing to camera or like overstating their lines. You want them to be that person, because the character is already funny, or the situation they've put in makes the comedy.
Yes, sure.
So that's probably the most interesting and challenging part, is getting the actors to basically do what they would do with any script and just play their character, deliver the performance, and the comedy will work. It'll be there.
Sure. Yeah, so that's an interesting insight into the, what you say about actors having to just play that role and let the script and the narrative and the, everything just play out. As far as character goes, though, how do you develop a character? Because everyone's different, and you're writing someone who's fictional. Are you basing that on people or are you basing it on something that you would perceive that individual would have within the story? How does that character come about?
Yeah, so I like to base them on people I know sometimes. It really depends, but it's all about, writers are usually kind of judgmental people, whether it's in a mean way or not. They're always constantly observing human behavior, and that's where you build a lot of your like kind of database from, to what this person would do in this situation. Or we're always quietly analyzing people. So you might be writing a character that's really like your brother, for instance. Like some of my Bogan characters are a bit like one of my brothers. Okay. And so, you've got that base there. You really know that character. But someone might be more of a stretch and more of a creation. Yeah. We've got a character in our new show, Wriggleton, who is a property developer, millionaire kind of guy. And he's kind of the antithesis of what an artist is. He's all about money and flashing it and wealth. And so that's kind of easy. We just say, what would we do in this situation? And he'll do the exact opposite almost. So there's different ways to approach it, but you want to try and build it to feel, authentic. And
it's interesting you say that you want to contrast it almost, because in the video, which is up on Facebook, of that Wriggleton, is it?
Yeah, so the show's called Welcome to Wriggleton.
Yeah. I saw that snippet and I saw that character come in, and you literally set it up to create the character as polar opposites of everything that the mayor of that town actually represented. Exactly. You just went, so the mayor was one extreme, bumbling, lacked confidence, all these things. And then the doors fly open like a messiah had just arrived, and everyone's seeking some sort of sign or about the situation that the town's in, and it's like this guy's come in and become the saviour. Yeah. So you can see humour in that here's this guy and he's all about money, and he just takes over and then sells them on BS.
Basically, it's a sales pitch that they're getting, but they're desperate. And that's what they are too. Is Gary, who's the villain in the story, is almost Clint's exact opposite, who's the mayor, which is the lead character.
Yeah.
This is a Wriggletonian only town hall meeting. The chair does not recognise the speaker.
Who are you?
Me? Trev?
When I look around this crowd, you know what I see? Potential. I see bakers and butchers, mothers. Sons. And what does anybody want? Family, friends, health, happiness. Everybody wants entertainment, thrills, fashion, bowling, and a 21 cinema megaplex. Everybody wants the Wriggleton Mega Mall.
So I can see that in hindsight because you're talking about contrast. How important is it when you're building character to actually have characters that some will align with each other in the story, but then there's others like the villains, like people get rapport or build rapport with characters.
You mean as an audience?
As an audience.
Yeah, of course. So you need likability. There's a great book if anyone's starting screenwriting called Save the Cat, and it's the real basics of how to write a script, and the first lessons are all about your character has to have a save the cat moment.
Yes.
So what that means is they have to have a redeemable quality, even if they're kind of a bad person, the protagonist, so the lead.
Yes.
If they're kind of a shit person, as long as they have that one save the cat moment,
yes,
an audience will follow them into the story. That's one of the keys. So, we've got this mayor and he's kind of useless, but he's also really passionate and he loves his town and he wants to save them.
Yes.
Whether he has any ability or skill to do that is where the comedy lies.
Yes.
But you see his charm, you see his passion and his love for his family and his town. So there's that redeemable side of him, even though he's a bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
Hi.
I don't think the people of Wriggleton are ready for the news about the budget. So, I learnt this great trick from watching American politics on CNN, fake news. It's called filibustering. Basically, you just talk for a very long time until no one listens anymore. Item 33. Should we change the town's Wi-Fi password?
Clint, that's enough, okay? We want to know about the town budget.
It's interesting because you bring these things up and they're things that we don't think about. Is production is designed, so the stuff that you're doing is designed that no one sees it. So when an audience watches a show, it's meant to be seamless. They don't need to know where the lighting was, the microphones, the video, who wrote the script and what that was. So when you talk about the process and production behind it, it stands out that when you think about other programs and what they actually do, that Save the Cat moment, for me, one of my favourite characters I've ever seen on TV, and you almost feel sorry for him, but it's because he's so human, is Lewis Litt of Suits. I've
never seen this show, but everyone always tells me to watch it.
So that individual, he's almost a villain within the organisation, to the extent that he just keeps stuffing up and hurting all the people around him with the stupid decisions he makes. But he always recognises his failings, and then he has a good heart, and he always comes good in the end with those Save the Cat moments. At times he's most needed, he comes good. And I like the character because he's more believable than any other character in the actual show, because he is so human and he fails so much. And
we're all so flawed, and we need to face that. And that's what you lose in a lot of these ultra bubblegum blockbuster Hollywood films is the hero is just a hero. There's nothing to them. You don't know who they are. You're just following Iron Man flying around the sky. Who is he?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what I think those big films lose a lot.
So what other processes are involved in coming up with a production? Like, you invest a lot in a production. Do you ever find mid-story or mid-production that you think you're getting it wrong, or is there, because there's so much planning involved, do you have a moment where you're that invested that it's hard to change direction or pull out, or what do you do in those moments where you might not be, things aren't going as well as planned?
Okay, so that always happens. There's kind of a rule of a film set that something has to go wrong almost every day, otherwise it wouldn't be a film set.
Yes.
So you have those constant minor challenges to face. I think trying to prevent story-wise problems, what I do in pre-production is we'll cast the characters early and we'll do what's called a table read.
Yes.
So we'll have a quite well-worked draft that's almost the shooting draft. we'll get all the actors in. So in Riggleton, there's 15 characters. We got them around this giant round table, and we ran, the entire script. And they're kind of acting, but they're just sitting there reading the lines, but they're doing them in character.
Yes.
And you're watching them interact, and you're seeing, okay, this is working. Oh, this character talking to that character works well. And all of that helped us inform. We've written the whole series.
Yes.
We've only shot the pilot, but those process of like working with the actors from the early stage really helps you inform like, the potential of this relationship or that storyline. And it affected how we wrote the series by doing that really early on.
Sure.
We had the one script. On the day, if, adjusting, sometimes you're watching a thing and it's just not working. Sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board and literally go, okay, let's just like have a break. And like you sit there and look at the script, talk to the actors, what could we change? And it can be that where you just pull back and change the entire scene sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's good. If you're siding it, then it means you know what you're doing and you're trying to solve the problem actively instead of, as you say, someone could sit back and just watch the scene go badly and then they get to the editing room and then they basically have a choice to have a bad scene or cut the scene, which is not what you want.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that because I know just how much is invested in a small amount of production from my point of view that you often only get one take with what I'm doing, but at the same time, if you get to the end of a production and realise that certain things weren't working or that it, didn't look good, how do you monitor that on set? Like, is it your eyes? Are there other eyes? Are you looking through different cameras? Like, what's your role when you're standing back and doing your directing?
Yeah, so when you direct, you want to be talking and being really engaged in the scene, walking with the actors. But then during the take, you'll watch at a monitor. So we call it split, is what it's called. You're just watching at a video village, is another name for it, and trying to watch what it would look like on screen. Because you got to think about what it looks like on screen, not look off at what they're doing, because it's not going to look like that. It's not a play, so you got to look at it on screen. How does it feel? How does it look? So that's your job while the takes are rolling.
And is there someone else there with you doing that as well, or is it more than one set of eyes?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So the bigger the set, the better. You'll have a job called continuity. Have you heard of that before?
No.
So what they do is make sure everything's going to make sense. So they'll know the script inside and out and what the characters' actions are. So just say someone takes off their hat and then you shoot the next scene and their hat's on.
Yeah.
That's so distracting. You've seen things where they've left it in big films.
Yeah.
Things like that. That's the simplest version of that. But continuity, what they also do is they watch the flow of the scene and they think about how you would edit it and if it's going to work in the editing process. So they really know the script and they know about editing as well.
Sure.
So they'll come up to me, look, you really need this shot, because when he says, I'll grab my hat, and this person says, let's go, you don't have anything to cut to that's going to make sense because da-da-da, and there's all these film rules that are too elaborate to explain about, when it'll make you as an audience member go, oh, that was weird, but I don't know why. Just the way you'll cut from one thing to the other.
Yes, sure.
There's all these unwritten rules.
So it's interesting. I've not heard the term continuity.
Mm-hmm.
However, I have experienced that in my own studio where someone had a loo break come back and we re-entered the thing, and you'll notice the wire there on the
totally
side. Put it on the other side and it's coming down. I could see him battling with the thing, and we're probably about 5 minutes back into the interview, and I had to stop and say, hey, maybe if you put your headphones around the other way. But I figured later, like, that would be clearly, someone might not notice the difference, but they would notice the difference subconsciously. And something didn't seem right, particularly when we'd spoken for 20 or something minutes. So now I understand it has a name. Continuity.
So it's a whole job in sets. There'll be someone who's really good at it, and in like Hollywood level, they get paid really well because they don't miss things.
Yeah. So at that production side, so you got your actors at the moment. You said your Welcome to Riggleton's got 15 cast members. Behind the scenes, how big is the support crew that supports you in your role, that aren't on screen, that aren't on camera?
It really depends what you're doing on what day, because a lot of the stuff we're doing is volunteer basis. It's investment in the future of their careers for the crew members, just like us. Like, we're not making money off it.
Yes.
We're actually spending money we're making elsewhere in the business to make creative content. So we'll have our core group that are all in the head role. So say the camera person, which is actually called a cinematographer. So they're in charge of the camera and what the image looks like. You've got your sound recordist. You've got your production designer, which is Sean, my partner. You might have a costume person. So that everyone has their one job. But like we have this core crew that we work on everything together as a little collaborative unit.
Yes.
And then we'll get our like contacts elsewhere to fill those secondary roles. So with the camera, you'll have 2 assistants. So that could be someone on one day and then they can't be available. The next day it's a different person.
Yes.
You've got to be really flexible with that. So the crew we've used overall is probably like about 25 people.
Yes.
But there might only be 12 of them on the set per day
Yeah.
through the 5-6 day shoot.
Yeah. Also, talking about the people involved, and the fact that they're volunteering at the moment with some of those. So you obviously your commercial work's covering the costs
Paid,
of those.
of course,
yeah. So you are making a living doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
But these other side projects are where you want to be more or less. You've got to show works that demonstrate your ability outside of the commercial environment. What's one of your end games? I know you said you've pitched some stories to some of the local TV channels. Is that something that you're trying to do, is come up with some content that they say, yeah, we'll back you for this story?
Yeah, that would be amazing. It's really hard, obviously.
Yes.
Even the political landscape affects that. So whenever the Liberal Party get in, there's less funding for, say, the ABC. And the ABC and the SBS are 2 of the only places that will really fund Australian content that's, about Australian stories that's not internationally viable.
Yes.
So you've basically got those 2 options to approach. With a project in 2018 summer school, we talked to both of them. We talked to the local funding body, Screen Queensland, and we, kind of workshopped the idea with them. It didn't end up eventuating to any funding, and we're hoping to go one better this time with Welcome to Riggleton.
Well, we've got a...
Okay. Classic. I nearly shit myself. All right, double A's it is.
Yeah, double A's.
Oh, and Joe, mate.
Jesus Christ, you did shit yourself.
Cop that.
Hey man, I'm Rick. Just wanted to formally introduce myself.
Joe, maintenance. If you ever need anything, just come and ask myself or my apprentice Leroy.
Did you, Oh, jeez, that is nasty, bro. Hey. G'day, Leroy.
Rick P.
Stinks in here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, you've got those streaming bodies and stuff, but they're very hard to get a foot in the door with them unless you're really established.
Yes.
Netflix, for instance, makes hardly any Australian content, and I think, I'm pushing, and a lot of screen industry people are saying that there should be quotas where they have to make a certain level of local content.
Yeah, sure.
And that there should be like laws about that in every country in the world, because they do really come and take over, but don't really give anything back to the local industry.
Yeah, I know that was a requirement. Like, I studied journalism, and it was actually a requirement on TV at the time for licensing, that they have to show a certain amount of Australian content. I can't remember what it was. I think it was 20% back in the 90s.
Yeah, so free to air TV. I don't know if it still has that rule. I know kids content, definitely there's a quota.
Yes.
That every channel has to play enough kids content, because it's good for education.
The way that the channels tended to get around the requirement was to just produce game shows, because they were cheap to produce. Absolutely. So people who may not know why there's so many game shows, it's deemed Australian content.
Yeah.
So it meets the quota and the criteria. News, I believe, also did. So, if you can produce a fair few bulletins, that's deemed Australian content.
Now they do.
Yeah.
The terrible reality shows like The Bachelor, and that'll count as well, because they're making the Australian version.
Yes, yeah. Talk about some of the projects that you've been on. One of the things I've observed with you're doing some skits, and they're just short, showing, again, abilities and things like that. So I noticed in the Welcome to Riggleton and the summer school that you've got a crossover with one of your main characters there, that he seems to be appearing in some of your other work, and you've kept him in character. So what's the approach, and why have you done that with one of those characters?
Yeah, so we're talking about Jake Doak, who's a friend of mine and just a hilarious person. You know those people you meet and they're just kind of magnetic, they're likable, everyone wants to be their mate, and they just give off this positive energy.
Yes.
He's just that kind of guy, really Aussie, really like a larrikin. And he plays it's actually technically a different character, but really similar character in Summer School and
Yes.
Welcome to Wriggleton, where he's a maintenance guy in one and he's a mechanic in the other, so it almost looks like the same costume and everything. But Jake is not a trained actor. He's just one of those people in your life that are just hilarious. And he just got into acting while we're at film school, kind of doing bits and pieces, and he's just really growing. And I love working with him because he's also great at improv. So he's probably one of the people who get the most free reign to go off tangent off my script.
Yeah.
Which I'm usually pretty precious about.
It's interesting you talk about improv. I think there was one of the Jim Carrey movies where at the end they show some bloopers, and one of the actors he was in a courtroom and he shouts out overacting to the judge, and that for me is he was given a lot of free reign with improv, as was Robin Williams. They said that those guys, they get to a level where they create stuff that wasn't written in the script that sometimes is absolutely priceless. So this individual has that for you. It comes down to
he's playing closer to real life, which always helps as well, like closer to who he is. Yeah.
So you're writing him into the script as himself?
Similar, similar kind.
Okay, yeah. So
exaggerated version.
Okay, yeah. So well, that's important from an acting point of view. I guess it demonstrates why people do actually write for actors. Sometimes they write with certain actors in mind. Some scripts aren't written like that, but some scripts are actually, I believe, I'm not in the industry, are pitched to actors before they're written because they have an idea of a character and they say, would you be prepared to play this character? And they throw a script at them for them to look at.
If they have relationships from other films and stuff as well, they'll write a thing and be writing it and being saying, blah, blah. Adam Sandler, I'm writing this for you, basically.
Yes.
And then they'll go and pitch it together. With that star power, you'll get the script up a lot easier too if you have those connections.
Sure. What do you see as the hurdles of the Australian industry, that you found moving forward? Obviously, every industry has hurdles, and this is a tough one. But not to, obviously, you don't want to go into political stuff that could shoot you in the foot. but what are some of the things as a up and coming, director and writer that you encounter that other people would probably say, "Oh, am I doing this?"
For me, it's really hard to get that step up when you're coming in. No one knows who you are. And all you can do to prove yourself is keep creating content.
Yes.
And it costs us money and so much time and effort every time to keep producing content and, to just gradually build our kind of repertoire. And it's really the only way you can do it. So there's not really a fair and equitable way you can give everyone coming up a chance. So there's not really I don't really have the solution.
Yeah.
But it's just a long road. It's just like similar industries like stand-up comedy. They say you're not good at that for 10 years.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the same with film. Maybe that's just the facts. You've got to go through. You've got to do your 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
That 10,000 hours rule to become a expert. I believe there's a book written around that. I think it's worked out that you would have to ply your trade or whatever you're working on for 3 hours a day for 9 years or something to actually be deemed an expert in that field. That's sort of the maths behind it.
Okay.
And
that doesn't sound that bad. I think I do about 14 hours a day every day.
Yeah. Yeah, so there would be some who would fast track that. And I think it's more so studies around musicians where you get to a degree of competency that's just secondary, I guess. It becomes part of who you are. Instinctual. Yeah, and particularly sports athletes is one area that sort of training, and then the result can be seen. And it's also, off camera, we're talking about a book, 10 years to overnight success, and that for most people who come on the scene that look to have a degree of success, they've been doing it for 10 years. They just haven't been noticed or picked up or whatever. And like yourself, you started when you were 13 picking up a camera. So you could almost start by saying, well, that's where it started as well. And the thing is in your industry, as with most industries, you can have that fixed mindset where you get to a point where you just think you know everything. But I would think in your industry, like a lot of industries as well, that there's so much to know and learn, that there's always something to be learning with what you're doing.
Definitely. And you learn stuff that's not in your direct line of sight. So departmentally, I'll learn a lot of things every set from other experts from lighting and camera and stuff.
Yes.
Because I'm not a master of any of the other technical trades.
Sure.
But I'm really interested in learning in general. So I'll be like, oh, why do you guys do this thing when we have 5 minutes break or whatever?
Yeah.
And then they'll teach me some weird fact about, how sound waves work or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just love that stuff, like you picking up little bits and pieces on the way. And as a director, every time you direct a scene, you're learning. And that's the only time you're really, applying that skill properly. And that's why we make so much content. So I can do my skill, complete it.
So everyone's
product
working
and-
together to actually upskill the whole time you're producing those things. It's all driven about a learning process because you're
and
investing
just pushing
in
the ball forward. Those little sketches we do, they're all, we try and shoot them in half a day with our best crew.
Yes.
We're all working together to just make the best thing we can in a short, tight time. Yeah, it's all volunteer again. And every time we feel like we're growing, we're becoming a better, more efficient team as well.
Yes.
So I think there's, the proposition value of that. Like in 10 years' time, you'll see that all that hard work pays off. And we're getting, those little bits of encouragement. You get into this film festival, you win this award, you get this grant, and it just spurs you on and you just keep pushing and slowly, trying to build that snowball to roll downhill.
You attended a film festival recently, actually. We had scheduled our interview for several weeks ago.
Oh yes,
and
Which
you
one was that?
messaged
So
you
many
messaged me.
things.
Yeah, you're like, oh, can we do this at a later date? I'm preparing to go. Where'd you go? Out west somewhere or something? It's like,
oh yeah, so this was Winton. So
Winton.
We were just about to go and we had so much to do. Sorry, yeah, that's my fault. So it's the Outback Film Festival. So it's the middle of nowhere, Winton, which is 2 hours out of Longreach, which is, if people don't know, that's where Qantas started.
Okay.
It's a pretty interesting part of the desert.
Yes.
Edge of Queensland, and it's a great film festival. They have it out under the stars. You sit in a deck chair and you're watching, top level Australian films and international films.
And
for
were
a
you
week.
presenting there? Did you have content at that film festival, or were you just
No, we were actually
brushing
doing
shoulders?
pre-production stuff. So we were involved in a writers' retreat.
Okay.
So a bunch of emerging writing talent was selected to go in a group and all have their idea and workshop it together. So we'd talk about our idea. Everyone would give us feedback and ideas, and we'd go around the table. And then at the end of the week, we all pitched our ideas. So pitching is a really important part of selling, an idea before production, getting people involved or getting funding in some cases.
So who you pitch to when you pitch? Like who are you? I imagine there's pitches all the way along. You're pitching to actors.
Yeah,
to be
you're
involved?
pitching to the best actor you can get, to work for free. You're pitching to the camera person that's, look, I've got a day job and I owe this money and I've got this bill, and you're like, no, but listen how good this idea is, you'll want to do it for free.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a constant struggle, and you're refining that pitch, and most importantly, you want to get to a stage where you're pitching to a network or something like we did last year with Summer School with to SBS.
And when you go and pitch on something like that, who's pitching with you?
So it depends who created it. With Summer School, I wrote the whole thing myself, so I was leading it, and I brought two actors to give their kind of like mindset of who their characters were that were important to the story. And then now me and Sean have been co-writing everything for the last kind of 18 months. So now we'll be going together and pitching together.
So how much writing would you say you do? You said you're working 14-hour days some days. Like obviously the commercial work puts bread and milk on the table, I'll say.
Just.
It's one of that. But here's the thing with passion. I spoke with someone who their family has spent, 70 years collecting VWs, and that's one of the people that have been on the program, and they spent $250,000 putting a Porsche motor into a bus to make it the second fastest in the world. And and my friend's like, wouldn't that be nice to have that sort of money in production? But the thing there is the individual's like, whoa, that's a lot of money. So well, that's what people with a passion do. Mm-hmm. It's like it's either find a way or sacrifice to be able to fulfill the passion. Do you feel that your passion is a calling? Like you did it since you were 13, playing around, you've enjoyed it. Do you actually feel there's a calling to do it?
Definitely. It's more like an obsession, like a drug addict. You can't stop doing it. And every time you'll get to the end of a shoot and you're so exhausted because you don't sleep enough and you work long days, and you're always just thinking and stressing and trying to make sure the next thing goes all right, that you go, oh, like you feel like I'll never want to do this again.
Yeah.
And you'll have like a day off, and then the next day, like, okay, what are we doing next? And you clap your hands together.
No, I get a little bit like that with the basketball stuff I do, where I schedule breaks for everyone, and because they're all like, because of the age group I work with, they're all in all these other programs, and it gets to the same point where you literally you give yourself the break, but then you're 1 or 2 days in, and you go, what am I going to do?
I can't
I've got
sit
to
still.
look at you're looking, which is one of the reasons this has come about actually, is because we're in break right now, so thus the interviews. So it gave me an opportunity to realise I have time to actually work on this as a project. So I fully get the concept of feeling a little bit exhausted, but 1 or 2 days is enough to get you going, well, what's next? So you said you're always writing. Are you allowed to divulge on some of the things ideas that you've had, or is that something that you guys keep to your chest too, because you don't want to give other writers ideas?
No, we don't really think like that. That is a weird thinking of like intellectual property, IP they call it. But I feel like as much as you can have this one great idea, an idea is an idea, and it's the execution that matters.
Yes.
So someone could say, I've got this great idea, but they might not know how to write the script.
Exactly.
You know, they might not have the skill.
Yeah. So they might hear you pitch something like and say, they might hear you pitch it and say, oh, that's a great story, but really the story is in your head still. It hasn't been, and then
well, if you're a 2-minute pitch, good luck writing the 90-page feature script. So at the moment in development, we have a feature film, which will be our first.
Yes.
So we're really excited about that. We're working with another company called Continuance Pictures.
Yes.
And we've just started like the ball rolling. I had a meeting yesterday about it. So we're really excited. We're not sure when it's shooting and like how long the lead up. We don't know if we want to shoot like what we call a proof of concept. So we might shoot like a scene from it or a short film version of it first to basically show what it can be.
Yes. Is this something you've written?
Into it. Yeah. So I wrote this over the last kind of, I must have finished it a few months ago. So it took about a year to write it.
Yeah. So while you're doing all this other stuff, you're actually writing.
Yeah, so this is the longest form thing I've done, so it took the most work.
How many pages is that script?
So it's 88, so it's like a 90-minute movie.
Yes.
It's like a PG family comedy, so it's for all ages, so I didn't want to make it too long, you know, kids with their attention span, it's like good to get in and out of a story. Yeah. So I always planned it like that. Okay. And I've been working on that while we're doing all the other projects.
Is there any advice you'd want to give any, people that might be going into the film industry here in Australia that you think would be of value to them going in?
Okay, I'll try and summate it. It's a bit tricky.
Yes.
I would say to be patient, work hard, not expect things to be handed to you, and learn. The film industry is one of the kind of ancient industries as far as hierarchy. It still exists. The director is like the dictator of the country still. You got to listen.
Yeah.
So, really follow that hierarchy wherever you are and whatever role you're doing, because you'll really learn from that process. That's the only way the film can ever get made and exist. So following that on set's really important. And if you're a writer, just write. Just keep writing. Get feedback. Don't be scared of someone telling you it's terrible, because that's how you get better. Greatest quote about writing, Ernest Hemingway: the first draft of anything is shit. And it's just like, that's the most accurate thing. If you're a creative person, with art or writing, whatever, just know that. And it's a really gradual process. You'll constantly slowly improve, and that piece of work will slowly improve with time and effort.
Artist that I've interviewed actually talks to that process and says how his art is full of failures. You don't see it because you don't see the failures in the end result. But he just said it's just hours upon hours upon hours of failure.
Yeah.
To achieve that end result.
So I feel like that's what life is. Yeah. So that's what art is. It reflects life.
Yeah. So Ernest Hemingway hit the nail on the head. Yeah. When you are in production, part of the process too is to make it look seamless for the audience. Do you want to speak to some of the techniques and the things that you actually might do to ensure that you talked about continuity earlier? That's obviously one key thing, but how much thought goes into lighting, audio, and location? Yeah,
so it's obviously all hampered by budgetary constraints. If you have any means, then you can do it all in a set and build everything from scratch, control every element. We don't, so choosing a location is really important. You want it to be aiding the story and giving you the right feel. But you also have got to think about sound, for instance. You don't want a great location beside the highway because all you're going to hear is trucks going past. I've been in some terrible ones when the sound guy will be like, oh God, how am I going to make this work in the post or the editing and things like that.
Sound is one of the hardest things to work with. It's video, you could probably get away with some
more
chops.
so,
Yeah, because you've got multiple camera angles.
There's also something about the human brain. We're so used to hearing things the right way because what you do in life is you're hearing things constantly without focusing on them. You're not thinking of the sound. So you know how everything should sound, and then you have the film tropes of like, when a door opens, it creaks, all those silly things that you've been taught as well. And so when something's wrong in a film, sound-wise, your ears notice, they tell your brain, and you're like, I hate this. Straight away, they say that filmmaking is 50% sound. Like, if something's wrong with the sound, people lose interest in focusing the story.
So I've got a friend who works and has done work with me who is in media, and one of the things he said to me is that most people, you'll get away with like shit video on a YouTube channel. And when I was coming to do this, he basically indicated that the sound has to be good because if it doesn't sound right, people aren't going to be able to listen long enough.
It's more frustrating. Yeah, it's grating. You go, I just can't.
So
this.
Things like reverb in a room like this, I've modified the room, and you probably saw when you came in what I'm doing for soundproofing within this studio, but I'm near a highway, so your reference to the highway earlier, and as you're speaking to it, they may not hear it because I'm monitoring the levels, but we had a vehicle just go past when you were speaking
trucks,
to it. Yeah. So interestingly, I'm aware of the equipment in the studio, so I can appreciate some of what you're saying and how it tricky it can be. But audio, lighting, so it's almost like an orchestra. As a director, you're orchestrating all these different technical sides of things to make it look as natural and seamless as possible. So that's where having good technical minds comes in. And I guess as a director, you would want, like you said, you're talking to those technical people about things that interest you. And I guess as a director, you need to have an understanding or interest around lighting and sound and things like that too, so that if you're trying to get a particular type of outcome through those senses, then I guess understanding lighting, understanding sound becomes pretty important. So what other areas of production do you feel you need as a director to have an understanding of or your head around?
Yeah, I think the more you can learn, and that's what I'm constantly interested in, adding skills and adding knowledge, because you'll just become better about any part of it. As you said, lighting sounds really important to the kind of technical aspects to convey the emotion you want. The other thing that's really undervalued by most people is production design. So when you walk into a scene, a shop, a house, what's in the environment, everything in there is production design. So the chair the character's sitting on is really important to say something about who they are. If they, even like their action, are they leaning on the counter? Are they standing looking out the window, and what does that mean? And what's the environment? What are the curtains? What kind of light's coming through? All those things are really, really important to telling the story. We'll use a lot of that technique of like costume and production design to tell you something about a character really quickly in Riggleton, because we've got those 15 characters. You've got one scene of each of them basically in the pilot to set them up for the series.
Yes.
And we heavily invested time in like what their costume would be, what kind of environment we find them in, to give us an idea of who they are as a person.
Yes.
The other things go into really detail is like color palettes. So you'll be like, what kind of colors would they wear and why, and what does that reflect? Like you've got the classic, our hero Clint, who's the bumbling mayor. He has the white hat.
Yes.
Our villain comes in the all black outfit, like a classic Western trope. So we like to play with that kind of, like classic trope, because we have like a country story.
Yes.
We almost made them like country, like Western cowboy rivals.
Yes.
And that kind of plays out throughout the series. They actually have a standoff in the street at high noon later on in the series.
Okay. That'll be interesting. So, yeah. Well, that's pretty good. Look, I'll finish up our little chat there. It's been great having you here, Joel Stephen Fleming of 13th Street Films, to share your journey and your passion for filmmaking and directing and writing. I really appreciate the time. If anyone wants to see the work that 13th Street Films are doing, I'll put the links to all their projects in the description below of this video. But I really appreciate that you've given your time to share with us some of the behind the scenes workings of a production company.
Thank you. Thanks for your time, buddy.
No worries, mate.
Cheers.
Thanks for taking time to watch this video. If you enjoyed what you saw, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet subscribed, make sure you smash that subscribe button and also hit the bell button to get notified when new interviews are uploaded. Once again, thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you again sometime. Catch you later.